Hi all, thanks for having me at the CDCon. I'm happy to participate virtually this year, as I have no passport, so I cannot join you in Austin, but I hope you have a great conference and great contributor summits after that. My name is Oleg Nenashev. I work for Dynatrace, and I'm one of contributors in the Jenkins project. I'm also a TUC member in the Continuous Delivery Foundation, and in November I joined Dynatrace to help with open source projects, including Tekton, Open Feature, and other open source initiatives. Today, my presentation will be about Jenkins and its future. I mostly focus Jenkins users and contributors. It will be quite high-level talk. I don't have much time to do deep dive, but I'm happy to do it in community later if you're interested. So slides are already available. And as always, disclaimer, I just talk about my own opinion, and I'm not very aligned with the Jenkins community at the moment, because actually I'm taking a sabbatical at the moment because of my personal reasons, because of the ongoing war. You know, the Jenkins and the Continuous Delivery Foundation made official statements, but I still participate in Jenkins governance, do mentorship in Google Summer of Code, will help Chris Stern and Abude to help a student working on Jenkins File Runner and the GitHub action. And be sure I will be back in the community soon. Okay, so if you have ever used Jenkins, probably you've seen my name there a few times. So yeah, I'm a maintainer of the Jenkins core. I organize various events and meetups. I was a Jenkins events officer for something like 1 year. I've been organizing Google Summer of Code since 2016 and until this year. I'm also a co-maintainer in the Jenkins Configuration as Code plugin, and I'm a big fan of configuration as code and infrastructure as code ecosystem in Jenkins. And I'm a maintainer of Jenkins File Runner. It's a new engine for serverless execution of Jenkins pipelines. I'll cover it briefly later. So before we go to the future of Jenkins, let's go to the past. And yeah, you know, Jenkins started more than 15 years ago to automate various use cases, including building, testing software. It was long ago, and Jenkins became an industry standard. So all of us know about it, and there is no point to spend time on 15 years of history. So let's skip them a bit. And actually, what is Jenkins now? So first of all, it's automation server and framework. It's not a CI/CD tool as many think. It's fully open source. It has open community, and there are more than 1,800 plugins in its ecosystem. And thanks to this community, you get a lot of support, you get a lot of assistance, and the ecosystem keeps evolving in many directions, from front end to extra integrations and Kubernetes support. And for many people, one of the important items is that commercial support is available. So if you need it, you can get it. So how Jenkins succeed? Again, I will quote Kosuke on this side. So actually, he pointed out 3 main reasons for Jenkins success. So first of all, it's extensible, so you can adapt it for any needs. It's general purpose, so you don't have to be a software engineer or engineer at all. So for example, I started using Jenkins for testing hardware projects when it was still Hudson. But many use it for various kinds, including accounting automation, and it just works. And last but not least, one of the factors was Tekton community. Sorry, Jenkins community. This is a great community, and it pushed the project forward since its very beginning. And now, more than 15 years later, it still evolves thanks to its community. So for me, the key reasons for success are firstly open governance. All the decisions are taken publicly, and this can be discussed publicly. The evolution is defined by contributors. So basically, the project officially declares meritocracy as a decision making. If you contribute, you have a seat at the table. And if you want to participate, just start contributing. And if you're a company, if you're individual contributors, the project is open for you. You can just join and start working on your interest, and we do not set many requirements for the plugin ecosystem. So maintainers basically have full powers in their plugins. It leads to many disadvantages. Well, many of us talk about plugin hell, dependency issues, etc. At the same time, it was the way for Jenkins to achieve this ecosystem. And actually, for me, it works well. So the project has been evolving since the very beginning, and actually changed a lot. So maybe you remember Hudson in 2008, when it was basically just working, executing some builds. Jenkins became much more powerful in terms of tools, in terms of ecosystem. And if we talk about Jenkins in 2022, I would mention a few items like pipeline as code. So defining all pipelines in a CM, of course, configuration as code, where you define your Jenkins system configuration and configuration of your entire ecosystem as infrastructure as code. We have a lot of new plugins and integrations for modern tools. We have modern packaging, including Kubernetes operator, Helm charts, Docker images, and we have distributions for public cloud available. Now there is a lot of work on supporting additional platforms, but Jenkins is basically available everywhere. And the project keeps growing. Unfortunately, I haven't updated this screenshot, but trust me, it still keeps growing in terms of contributions. And there is still a major uptick in terms of automated contributions by bots, but we mostly care about the contributors that participate as individuals. Okay, so if you take numbers, so in 2019, we had more than 5,000 contributors. Now we stay at this more than 5,000 contributors mark. So we are not growing exponentially, but Jenkins remains top second project in the CNCF and CDF ecosystem. This screenshot is also a bit outdated. So now OpenTelemetry is probably top 4 project in the CNCF, and it is growing like hell. But ultimately, Jenkins is still the second biggest project in the foundations. So some obstacles we hit during the growth, of course, when having this rapid growth from a few dozens contributors in 2010s to 5,000 contributors in recent years. Of course, we got a lot of isolated communities. Sometimes there was lack of transparency, not intentional ones. People were just using channels that were not defined well. Sometimes Jenkins can be perceived as lacking focus because there are many people pushing in different directions. Again, the changes happen only where there are contributions. And it's hard for many contributors to actually get behind the initiatives because you cannot find them. At the same time, it's difficult to find contributors for initiatives too. So there were many issues with visibility and outreach, and we started working on community consolidations. So for example, 10 years ago, we introduced open governance. So when we got renamed to Jenkins, there were regular governance meetings ever since. In 2015, we introduced sub-teams, officers, sub-projects. Then we introduced the framework of Jenkins enhancement proposals for technical discussions and specifications. We started various special interest groups. So for example, platform seek, advocacy and outreach, cloud native, etc., etc. We also had first ever governance board elections in 2019. Yes, 8 years later, but we had them, and now this process becomes regular. Also, we became a founding member of the Continuous Delivery Foundation, thanks to CDF for hosting this conference. And in 2020, we actually graduated at the CDF as Jenkins, and we also introduced public roadmap as a part of this graduation. All of that was needed to help the project become more visible and to help people understand where we are going. So the public roadmap, yeah, you made a number of presentations on that topic. It's almost 2 years old by now. It still addresses Jenkins users, contributors, adopters, and vendors. We keep this roadmap mostly up to date, and our main focus is to keep the roadmap community driven. So whomever drives an initiative, they are welcome to put the initiative on this roadmap. All initiatives are welcome, whether it's Jenkins features, major bug fixes, documentation, infrastructure, community, events, whatever. all of that can be represented on the roadmap. We have an open and transparent process how we get these items accepted based on pull requests. We have open data, so you can just extract it in a YAML format for your own purposes. At the same time, we don't commit on any dates and delivery at all, because again, Jenkins evolves where we have contributors. So if you don't see a particular item evolving, being stuck, let's say, in progress for something like 2 or 3 years or in preview, the best thing you can do is actually contribute to the project. And here go the obstacles for the Jenkins community, because we can speak about its advantages for a long time, but obviously not everything great in the project. Recently, I did a few presentations about revolution of open source CI/CD tools. And these presentations also include Jenkins as one of the key studies. So just a quick excerpt from this presentation. So I consider Jenkins as a 3rd generation. This generation actually faced a lot of issues since it was founded, including introduction of continuous delivery, DevOps, continuous deployment, GitOps, configuration as code, various quality assurance approaches like shift left. And the 3rd generation had to evolve a lot to meet these demands. Some projects succeeded, like Jenkins, also, of course, TeamCity, of course, Azure DevOps. Some projects didn't succeed, but ultimately there were drastic changes. And basically for projects like Jenkins that existed for a long time, there were a lot of periods with different architectures and different solutions, even if the name remains the same. For Jenkins, one of its biggest advantages and disadvantages has always been a framework nature. So it's not something like ready to fly, you just build something on your own. So Jenkins is not a tool that does continuous delivery or continuous integration. It's automation framework, which you take, adjust for your cases and start using. You need to do that, you need to have a lot of configuration, infrastructure, you need to set up plugins, configure everything, write samples and demos for your teams, and also write documentation. Well, sometimes we don't, but yeah, ultimately such systems require a lot of specialized documentation to be useful. It's not enough to just go to Jenkins documentation and start using it for your system. Also, there is a lot of problems in Jenkins architecturally. Again, one of the biggest things of framework is that it falls apart without proper maintenance. So it requires continuous investment, it requires special expertise, and this expertise is again a cost that falls on your team as a cost of ownership. So sometimes you don't want to take framework, instead of that you take SaaS, you take a managed system, because it's much cheaper for you and you don't have to find a special expertise for your team. Jenkins is different. It's great for big projects, it's great for custom projects, it's probably not that great for common use cases anymore. And naturally, its frameworkishness also leads to a difficult learning curve, because you start from something very easy, like make build or Maven clean package. Then you install plugins, configure them, then you end up with hitting various limitations you can resolve by your custom plugins or advanced features, and you start working on that. All of that makes Jenkins a tool which is really hard to master, but it's possible. At the same time, in the modern world, if we compete on the area of CI/CD, Jenkins has difficulties with competing. Another area is, of course, compatibility, because 10 years of compatibility also have a cost, including various architecture issues, various old libraries. If you take a look at the GitHub, Jenkins spends significant time just updating dependencies, cleaning up security vulnerabilities, and many of the things actually come from historical or old architecture. And some issues also impact scalability. So we know that in Jenkins, most of the things happen on the controller instead of modern approaches, when the most of the workload goes to executor, and controllers tend to be either ephemeral. Jenkins is not ephemeral. Jenkins is not cloud native as controller. You can build a cloud native system on the top of it. For example, ask how people in VirtualLab build it or in SAP build it, but still Jenkins itself is not cloud native and is quite heavy, and it creates a serious load on the infrastructure. Also, web UI. Yeah, I took the most terrible screenshot, and to be honest, you can still see it in Jenkins. It's a configuration of role strategy plugin. I'm a maintainer of this plugin, so it's only me to blame. Jenkins sometimes has a terrible UI. It actually changed over the time. So thanks to many contributors and to the UX seek in the recent years, its visualization improved a lot, navigation improved a lot, and also we addressed many common issues like switching from table layouts to div layouts, having better navigation, better iconography, typography, and also a lot of UX features in terms of sorting panels, so it becomes more useful. Another issue for Jenkins, again, coming from its old style, that wherever you go, you may see all Jenkins. Because Jenkins in 2011 was completely different one. There were freestyle jobs, there were plugins like custom tools plugins, Originator, parameterized trigger. You used to build chains of jobs with triggers, copy artifacts. It was terrible design, which was sometimes having deadlocks, and actually all these steps are still there, and they're reasonable in many cases when you don't want to invest much, when you just need a simple build use case. But for classic pipelines, of course, currently we would recommend the Jenkins pipeline or integration with Tekton, and this is something that still hits us. So for us, we are currently in the stage when Jenkins is super popular. At the same time, it has a lot of struggles with growing to the next generation, especially being cloud native, being well suited for the new world, when you have ephemeral executors, when you have a lot of interoperability between tools, when tools become super modular. It's a 5th generation. I didn't include slides from that, but I'm happy to discuss in Q&A, and full evolution of CI/CD is listed, is linked above. So what we need to do in Jenkins is actually, we, as Kosuke said in 2018, and it still becomes fully relevant, we are still stuck in the local optimum. So Jenkins itself, architecturally wise, it's very relevant for the modern world. But if we talk about the perspective in 5-10 years, it will become a niche tool, because at the moment people move on to cloud native approaches, people move on to better designed tools for specific use cases. They integrate CI, CD, orchestration, they introduce observability, and Jenkins needs to go in this direction to survive. So now we are not talking about adoption. Personally, I say survival, and Jenkins has to change a lot to stay relevant. 1 year ago, I published my vision about Jenkins. It took a lot of time to publish it because of various approval from my previous employer, etc. But finally, it's public, and you can see my vision for Jenkins. Now I'll just summarize what I want to see, and we will be able to discuss more during the contributor summit in 2 days. So first of all, for me, Jenkins is not just a project. For me, Jenkins is a community first. And if the community wants to proceed in a direction like making Jenkins cloud native, for me, it's fine, even if it impacts the project itself at the moment. And even if Jenkins community says that we want to build a new tool, like let's say Jenkins X, another iteration, Jenkins Y, maybe, I do not know. It's totally possible. But at the moment, from what we see, Jenkins still remains totally relevant. It was designed well, thanks to Kosuke, and it still remains as a core. But yeah, I wanted to emphasize that for me, the biggest objective in Jenkins right now is making Jenkins the best place to contribute. So what it means building a welcoming community that would be diverse, that would be focused on future. So on having Jenkins here to stay as a community and maybe as a project, having fully open. So it's not just having code, it's having fully transparent communications, decision making, open governance, and not having a single vendor dominating on the market. So I want to have a fully vendor neutral community, which would be welcoming to all individual and company contributors and users, and making them enabled to participate in all areas. So it could be Jenkins core, Jenkins pipeline, various plugins, whatever it is, security engines. So without any implicit vendor lock-in in open source components, unfortunately, we had the cases before, and this is something we need to get rid of. For Jenkins as a project, first of all, I want to see Jenkins anywhere. So it means that Jenkins becomes installable in Kubernetes, outside Kubernetes, on any major public cloud providers. We have an opportunity to run Jenkins just as a pipeline engine using Jenkins file runner. We can integrate it into other systems. So I do not longer see Jenkins anymore as an integrated solution like GitLab. For me, it's an automation engine and a bunch of components that can be repackaged as needed for CI/CD needs of the users. Also, I want Jenkins to become more cloud friendly. I do not say cloud native because I don't believe in cloud native for Jenkins, but I think that we should adjust. So we should make Jenkins more modular, more scalable, and at the same time provide the great experience of Jenkins as automation server. So for me, this main reason why we cannot make Jenkins cloud native, because in this case, it would lose a lot of its advantages as automation server. At the same time, UX must remain a priority. So we did a lot of great changes over the past years, and I want these changes to continue. And I want these changes to continue for Jenkins being a framework. So we still need to address use cases for bootstrapping of new users. So if you're a Java developer with Spring, if you use Quarkus, if you're Python developer, you should be able to start using Jenkins immediately, where various configurations, initializers, etc. But as whole, Jenkins should remain as a flexible framework available for everyone. And it should keep evolving with compatibility in mind. We should be willing to do breaking changes when needed, as we did multiple times before. But at the same time, Jenkins still remains compatible with many plugins created 10 years ago. And I think stability of its APIs will also a key success factor of it. So at the same time, if something needs, we can add more features, and we still need to be security first. So things like Kaseya or SolarWinds do not repeat through Jenkins. And for that, of course, we need to be investing more in security as a community. So thanks a lot to Wadik Folonier, Daniel Beck, and all the contributors who push security forward. I believe it's important for the project, and it should keep happening as it used before. So we have a few minutes left. I will just summarize what's going on. You can see all the slides on the roadmap. So for user experience, there is a lot of changes thanks to James Farasik and to other project contributors. Of course, Tim Giacomo, who contributed a lot. To documentation, and to Gavin, who created site search and who is currently working on the new Jenkins, the way repackaging. So we wanted to have all sides of user experience in place, not just code, not just UI, not just documentation, but we want to make a journey of Jenkins users and administrators beta. And it includes revamp, it includes documentation and guidance. And one of the topics we always talk about is better pipeline browsing. So I want to have a kind of BlueOcean by default in Jenkins. And this is kind of drastic decision because right now, I would say Jenkins pipeline roadmap is rather stalled. Nothing happens there. And I currently believe that something needs to be done in a radical way in Jenkins pipeline. So one of the things pipeline is in a high demand. We need to finish it. We have Jenkins templating engine. We have job DSL integration, and we need to make them a part of a default offering for the majority of users. We want to have IDE integrations, documentation improvements. And one of the things I'm always talking about is maybe making Jenkins pipeline engine pluggable so that other engines could be used as well. For example, like Tekton. For me, in recent years, Jenkins pipeline sustainability has been a question. And personally, I believe that Jenkins should be able to support other pipeline engines by default. For classic platforms, there were a lot of good changes. So recently we released supports for different platforms, including ARM. There is preview for Java 17 support. Please try it out and give us some feedback. And there is a lot of various housekeeping initiatives going on to make Jenkins effective, to make Jenkins suitable for classic platforms and use cases. And again, this is an area where we always look for contributors. At the same time, it's important to be in the cloud native ecosystem. And nowadays, when we say cloud native, we say Kubernetes, for better or worse. This is actually something we need to have more in the projects. We already invested a lot as a community, so we have official Helm charts, we have a Jenkins Kubernetes operator, which keeps evolving, which got 2 commercial offerings based on that, which gets more and more adoption. So thanks to everyone who facilitates these areas. We also have Jenkins File Runner as a pipeline engine. This project has been stalled for some time, but I think we need to return and push it because it's still viable for having Jenkins as a pluggable engine for other systems. And of course, all other stories like external pipeline engines, cloud native pipeline engines like Tekton would fit there well. Also, all stories for pluggable storage are deal breaker. And one of the biggest things is that we have a lot of stories in preview, which we need to get over the line. So cloud native SIG is dormant again, and I think we need to revive that somehow. Okay, so what's else on my wish list? Further adoption of OpenTelemetry, having CD events integrated for triggering and sending events, having more observability, so for events, metrics, traceability. I really want to have Tekton as a first-class pipeline engine in Jenkins, and I want to have extension points so that anyone can integrate other pipeline engine there if needed. And from the evolution standpoint, I think that Jenkins should rather focus on automation use cases where it's perfect, and probably it should be doing less orchestration because there are other tools that are more designed for that, including Spinnaker, Jenkins X, Tekton, basically CD events in combination with Knative. Any of this combination would be probably a viable solution for orchestration. So maybe it shouldn't be a core use case for Jenkins anymore, but it's something to discuss at the contributor summit. Okay, now I really have 1 minute left, so quick summary. First of all, yeah, Jenkins in 2022 is not Jenkins in 2012, is not Hudson in 2008. It changed a lot, and it actually keeps changing. It's probably its roadmap is available. Its roadmap needs to be updated. Something we will discuss at the contributor summit. Many projects are underway, and I believe that Jenkins in 2022 worth exploring, especially when you have complex automation use cases that can be covered by other tools out of the box. And as always, it's a great time to contribute. In Jenkins, we are always looking for contributors for different areas like code, documentation, testing, design, reviews. And basically, if you're interested in open source, if you're interested to participate, you're able to find something in open source where you could contribute. And talk to us at the Contributor Summit if you want to focus on particular areas. Contributing is not about code, and if you are just Jenkins user, if you want to share your experiences with Jenkins, it's also really valuable for the community, and we have platforms to share that, including Meetup, blogs, etc. So if you're interested to share with the community, you can do that. And again, reminder, we have Jenkins Contributor Summit starting in 2 days. So on Thursday, please join us, and we will be able to discuss any topic about Jenkins, about interoperability with other projects, and there will be quite packed agenda for this meeting. So thanks a lot for your time. I've been answering some questions in the chat, and we still have a few minutes to answer more questions before we have to go to another session. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for coming to the conference, and try out Jenkins. Bye.